And welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few people get together, we come up with their ideas the week before, and we talk about them. It's like a therapy session for fiction stories. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And we are here to tell you a story. Please bump your microphone more, Reed.
Sorry.
It's fine. I had government type. What did you have, Reed?
Ka-Tet members.
Well, perfect. Should I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. The government, basically, the government was the governments of the world. Like, I'm going to say this is not the governments of the world, but this is the government of one of the sort of prevailing superpowers. They were, like the governments of today are, loosely some form of democracy with some form of tyranny mixed in, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that meant they had a parliamentary system, whether that meant they had a Senate, whether that meant they had a ruling dictator. I don't know. That's not the huge point. The point isn't where they were. The point is where they are now. Then a star passed by the Earth. Not a star, but a shining comet passed by the Earth. And some of the gases, the star was emitting, some of the chunks and stuff fell to the Earth. And people began to express the most strange types of things. The biggest being that people in proximity to each other could hear each other's thoughts, could hear each other's willing thoughts, basically. At first it was could hear every single thought, but people quickly learned how to guard their minds. And that is how this country, basically the entire country, found out that they were kind of in a giant brain server, like a giant chat brain server. And very quickly, whatever prevailing government they had fell apart because people couldn't lie from to each other anymore. And you could hide yourself from this sort of collective mind talking thing.
Yeah.
But you had just like intense withdrawal symptoms, as the psyche of people's brain that crave human connection found an awesome drug of being connected to people all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So essentially the people who quote unquote cut themselves off are weirdos, are strange people who don't really function well in society anymore. Because it's been like 50 to 100 years, right?
Yeah. And you could imagine that the people that were terrible people quickly learned that they had to adapt. They were when you're part of each other like that, I'd imagine things people began to being a lot more empathetic. People would be more likely to experience compassion for others.
Yeah.
And if you were a jerk, you're pretty easily found out. Yeah, the manipulation games might be really hard to play poker.
Yeah. Except for the fact that it kind of, yes, but it also just people are going to lie. Mm-hmm. This isn't a utopia. Mm-hmm. You just got better at representing yourself in your own mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how it works is that I could talk to, like, let's say that we lived in this world. You and I could essentially hear each other. There's basically what's taught in schools now is that you have your front room and you have your back room.
Yeah.
Right? Your front room is where everyone is, right? That's where that's where the mailman is. That's where the delivery drivers are. That's where you order your food at fast food restaurants. The back room is where your friends and family are.
Yeah.
Right? So you and I would basically share conversations in the back room, and it doesn't matter if you were like here or like 100 miles away. People learn to pick up on each other's kind of quantum signals and be able to keep in contact with each other farther away. And so if you want to, you could sort of lay in your bed and just close your eyes and just allow yourself to wander out even farther. And soon I might be like talking to somebody in California, And at first they sound like they're kind of far away, but the more we talk, the closer they get, And this country, basically because they all developed this like form of intimacy, kind of became like an isolated system.
Oh, so this wasn't a worldwide...
Well, they don't know because they became super isolated, right? So other things were happening to other countries, but none of them had this specific thing happen to them, you know? So it's not like they could talk to people over in other countries, and it quickly became kind of like a giant clique, you know, because the brain picked up on this ability to communicate and the intimacy of it, and basically just like rejected anyone who didn't have it. And so whatever is happening to other countries, I don't know. But now this whole country is kind of ruled by direct one-to-one vote.
Wow.
And, you know, there's still people are still being, you know, people still lobby and people still try to get people to vote for them. But representative systems are, you know, like the electoral college isn't, that sort of thing isn't a thing anymore. It's literally because of the fact that someone, like, everyone can be queried. Everyone can be asked. Therefore, everyone is asked.
Have you ever read Zardoz?
Yeah, I mean, you've told me about it a bunch of times.
Yeah. Well, that they were in the bubble. The ones in the bubble, they had this telepathy, and everybody voted. It was a pure democracy, literally one-to-one democracy. Yeah.
And it kind of seemed really good, you know. And it's kind of working for them.
Yeah.
But they've kind of all, if it does anything, it unites them all.
Yeah.
You know, because no person so far, a couple people have fled the country, but they are just found later, just like their body can't take the not being connected to this thing, you know. And people are still developing ways to, like, there's like the government is apparently working on some way to like block it, you know, so that, because right now the sort of mental blocks only work so much, you know. Once a person falls asleep, you could like listen to them in their sleep, and then people have found ways to like hypnotize people while they're asleep and like get them to give information. You know, like the whole idea of like espionage has become like so much more complex.
Yeah.
So I think that what's happening in this story at this point is that this country is deciding to, like, after this great thing that happened, or this terrible or whatever thing that happened, they have finally decided that they are stable enough to reopen their borders, basically.
Okay.
To like to see what's up with the rest of the world. So that's the government type.
Okay. Well, this is the Ka-Tet members. There's 3 of them. Rocco, Slade, and True Tao. They, at the same time this celestial body passed by and created this disturbance, these 3 were transmuted out of a different phase. They were very disoriented, and there were 3, couldn't have been more different people, but they had been locked in a kind of a, I don't know what I'm fighting for the word. They had I'll just tell the story about how they got together. It was during the Vietnam War. Rocco grew up in West Texas. His dad was a wildcatter. He just was tired of dust and dry and decided to join the Navy as a kid. Slade, father was a Wall Street banker. He grew up in private schools, Ivy Leaguer. He always wanted to be a pilot and became a Navy pilot. True Tao was a Laotian, grew up in a Hmong village, and they had been reached by missionaries. And he had shown a lot of academic ability, and his parents had arranged to have him go to America to study and to go to school. And what had happened is that the fighting in Vietnam had put his family in danger, and he had gone back to Laos to try to find his family and see if they needed to be rescued or what he could do. Rocco ended up in the Navy. He ended up being a crew chief on a rescue helicopter. He was a crew on a crew that would go into North Vietnam and try to rescue downed pilots. Slade was an A6 driver. He was a A6 intruder attack bomber pilot, and he got a Russian-made SAM up his tailpipe, and his plane was just shot down. He bailed out. And the helicopter Rocco worked on was sent in to get him. They were shot down. His copter was crashed. He was the only one that got out of it. Slade found the wreckage and dug Rocco out. He wasn't hurt very bad, but he had been kind of stunned. So they hightailed it into the bush. And their instructions were that if something went wrong, they were supposed to head towards certain, a direction, because there were some of the Laotian villagers worked with CIA for, extracting prisoners and whatnot. And that's how they ran into this True Tao, and he spoke English, and his village had been destroyed, and that was where they were supposed to meet up. And they found themselves in a firefight with Viet Cong soldiers, and they escaped into this overgrown Buddhist temple complex in the jungle, and they hid out, and they found their way into this secret passage, and they were waiting for things to blow over, waiting for nightfall or something so they could. And when they came out, everything was different. And by the state of affairs of the ruins, it was clear that an enormous amount of time had gone by. And
they got Rumpelstiltskin.
Yep, they did. And here, then they realized that what had happened, there had been kind of an upheaval that had slid the thing that had the big rock entrance for the hiding place they were in had been slid out, and they have no idea how long they were stuck together. But as soon as they came out, they began hearing each other's thoughts. And like I say, these three guys couldn't have been more different from each other. Rocco, definitely blue-collar West Texas. Slade, definitely East Coast snob. True Tao, young guy, a Christianized Laotian. And they found out that as they tried to find their way to civilization, there was a great deal of evidence that hundreds of years had passed and nothing was the same. And they find themselves, they finally, they get to this, the country that the story is taking place in. And it's clear that the geopolitical boundaries were entirely different than at the time of the 20th century when they entered. And so they, you walk into a situation with, early 1970s mindsets about things.
Right.
And they're trying to figure out, well, what are we doing here,
Right. Well, the country that happened to could be Vietnam.
Yeah.
That's an option.
Yeah, because, Vietnam has definitely developed a hybrid free market system with a communist authoritarian government.
Right.
Yeah.
But maybe, in the middle of them being, in whenever this thing happened, what I kind of see happening is that every single different country has developed a different sort of thing.
Yeah.
And part of what I'm thinking that it is it's like a parasite. Mm-hmm. It's like kind of like a fungus that's connected to itself, like on the quantum level. Mm-hmm. And so it infects a people and then manifests in some way consistently throughout the entire people, Mm-hmm. So there could be lots of different things. Like I just thought, like maybe Russia, like everyone in Russia is immune to the cold now.
Oh. That's cool.
They just and that's given them the ability to pull themselves out of economic failure because they the entire country doesn't need to heat themselves during the winter. That's the biggest energy savings in the world.
Instead of hunkering down and complaining about the snot freezer, they're, isn't the air nice and crisp today?
Yeah, it's in every single different country, and because what happened was this parasite or bacteria or whatever it is recognizes a unified people.
Ooh.
Right? But it doesn't recognize a unified people like what their front brain says that they're unified.
Yeah.
It recognizes like a unified people according to like geography based. But then what it also does is it kind of binds them together, and creates this same thing that happens like what happens in Vietnam, where if you leave the space, then you lose that sense of intimacy and you just kind of you fail.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. Maybe a lot of these countries have been in kind of turmoil because the idea of who actually is the native species,
mm-hmm.
who is supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Like I'm just thinking about what's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now. It's like, well, the people on the border of Ukraine, what would they be? Would they have the Ukraine superpower, or would they have the Russia superpower?
That's great.
It's like, and then also people who like maybe don't feel like countries are a thing, who have no sort of loyalty to a country. Where would they, how would they sit? Maybe those are the people who become kind of like the border dwellers, like the people who don't have allegiances. Mm-hmm. But then, because what happens is when this parasite infects and sort of changes people, I would say something like, kind of like how in Minnesota, there's Minnesota pride, but then there's also America pride.
Yeah.
There would be like subsets of things, like. So in America, whatever the I don't know what the specific mutation would be, but there would be something where you felt more at home or more attuned with people who were in Minnesota per se, but then also attuned with people who were in America as a whole, and if someone from California came to Minnesota, it would take a while for the parasites of California to die off and the parasites of Minnesota to propagate,
Yeah.
But then going out of the border, there is no dying off or whatever. It's just like if you try to leave the place that you are in, I don't know. This is weird. I don't want to say that like a weird parasite like looks at a map and says, "Oh, these people are from Minnesota, therefore they're going to get this." But this, maybe it's more regional then. Maybe it's more like North America and Europe and Asia sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where they all kind of share the same basic thing. And then it's really kind of like, well, in America, we all have resistance to this thing or that thing over there. But then in America, like in the USA, because there's a higher population of this certain parasite, then we all kind of show a more likely aptitude towards that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not like the parasites are looking at a map and deciding that this is how it's going to be. It's just it just happens that way because that's kind of how things spread. So the story obviously starts in Vietnam, where with the Ka-Tet members, or maybe it starts somewhere else with the hero kind of. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's if these guys, these two, one guy from New England, the other one from West Texas, and then this other one from Laos, if they would be affected the same way, and here they like the disturbance that opened them out of their time-lapse prison, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't conscious of much time going by at all.
Right.
And then there was a kind of like a seismic disturbance that was part of this thing, and the place where they had hid in this temple, the big stone that had slid shut when they ducked in there, that opened up and they came out, and all this time had gone by, and the war was no longer going on.
Yeah.
And they had to figure out, what was happening, and having to adapt. And they realized that there was something going on, but they had just started to get affected, at the same time as the other people were. So it was this process. They were in on the process from the beginning.
Right. Or there was some catalyst that made them not affected because, several hundred years had passed, and so there was some genetic catalyst that future generations had already, they'd already eaten, high fructose corn syrup for 6 generations.
And they had their full course of vaccinations.
Yeah, or whatever. It's like, and therefore that set this Ka-Tet at kind of a weird place that they didn't not only did they not they like didn't get attributed to any of it, which was really weird because that they haven't, people have, this could be part of the story. People have theorized that there were such and such and such and such things that probably would inhibit someone from being affected by this. But, these are the first people who don't have any of which means one thing, Reed, these people can travel.
Yeah.
The world.
Yeah.
Where now in order to travel, it's like where before it's only the rich who can travel. Seriously, now the rich literally have to travel with enough earth, with enough space to sort of convince themselves psychologically that they haven't left their country.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So maybe a sort of a thing like where a guy's like his whole house literally gets room by room packed up onto a plane, and he is this like really rich guy, and he travels to every single country in the world, but he like is very careful. He like tricks the psychology of his brain to think that he's still in New York City.
Cool.
Yeah. So that he'll stop producing enough electricity to power his house. Whatever it is that the Americas can do, producing electricity, maybe, whatever it is, teleportation, whatever. But these guys kind of, have they come out white when this thing has started? Because this phenomenon has been going on for 50 to 100 years now.
See, I don't know. I'm thinking that they were trapped here while all these, the society evolved, and then we had this extra Terran event where a close pass by of this comet or whatever it was, and so I don't know when we should have them join the story. I guess, and they aren't the kind of people that would probably generally hang out with each other, but they were just in an environment where it was survival. There were bad guys with guns. They were looking out for each other because they were all they had.
Yeah.
And they hide in this rock temple ruin and stay for a while and come out, and everything has changed. Like you said, they'd been Rumpelstiltskins. They had slept, but they weren't conscious of traveling, of even days and days. I mean, of going by, they hadn't worried about food or,
Right. I'm trying to figure out who the hero is, and I'm thinking the hero maybe the hero's like a scientist who's sort of studying one of them.
Yeah, like if they find themselves into civilization, into some place where people are gathering together and working together, and they have this psychic communion system there, so they're immediately able to access what's going on and filling themselves in on what has happened in history.
They are able to access. I thought that they were cut off from it and weren't able to access because they weren't part of the system.
Yeah, well, what would be the best way to have the story? It could be either.
Yeah, part of my thing was that they would basically have to
or
they were cut off from it, right?
True Tao. This was around his home village, so it would be his people, but he probably would be affected.
I mean, do you just really want the Ka-Tet members to be able to read each other's thoughts? Because
I was thinking that would be better, yeah. But
okay, but I mean, what makes them special then? How will they? How will Ka use them?
Well, it starts by what are we doing here and what happened? Answering those questions, first of all, to see where they even start. True's village had been wiped out. He'd found that out.
Right.
And he was sort of like a duck out of water. And when he found these guys.
Right.
And they're all young men in their prime of life and without a great deal in common, except that they were in a survival situation together and then hid and slept, and then they found everything different.
Right.
It isn't like it's a change for the worse. I mean, there's a war-torn country where you had indigenous peoples that were living in, clan groups, tribal groups, and they were being exploited by a series of other powers. First the French colonials, and then, but before that, the incursions from the Chinese, and and then the Viet Minh and the communists under Ho Chi Minh, and the influence of the Catholics there, and this was a war-torn culture that had been brutalized in many different ways over centuries.
Right.
And now things were going pretty smooth.
Yeah, now the country was like reopening its borders for the first time in like 50 years after having gone under another kind of great revolution because of like this crazy thing that people are able to do. So I'm thinking that the hero is one of True Tao's siblings, like descendants.
Yes.
Right? And he doesn't know that at first. That's not a thing that he knows at first. But basically, what is his name? True Tao. Who are the other people?
Rocco and Slade.
Rocco and Slade. They all like try their best to blend in, you know, and they grew up in the, you know, it was the 70s when they were
right
young men. And now it's, you know, 2055 or something like that.
And you know, technology changed, obviously.
Oh, yeah. And they're quickly kind of picked up, right? And at first they're picked up, but then Rocco and Slade are kind of singled out because True Tao looks like them, you know?
Yeah.
But like, here's Rocco and Slade, two people who look European or American, and, you know, that means that there's a serious issue. That means that these people are grifters who aren't part of a group, you know, and therefore not connected to anyone, or it means that they're spies, or it means there's something else. And so it's kind of like this interrogation thing where then they realize that they can't connect to True Tao.
Yeah.
The True Tao isn't a part of their sort of system. And maybe they can only just start to connect to him. It's kind of like just starting to be able to sense what he is feeling. As the parasites now with a new person are just starting to work their way parasites. It's more of like a fungus, I imagine, is just starting to work its way into his system, right?
Right.
And so then all three of them get shipped off to a medical place, like a lab, where the whatever gets stopped in True Tao. Whatever process the fungus was taking place in order to embed itself into his body gets cut off because there's some issue.
Right.
It's not all chocolates and rainbows in the world of this fungus. You know, maybe it shortens the lifespan. Maybe it increases the lifespan, but also decreases the ability to give birth.
Yeah.
So it's like a guy who was 20 years old 100 years ago only looks and feels, and his body has only degraded 10 years.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's been an 80% increase in miscarriages.
Wow.
As like, you know, so at first they were like, oh, this is so great. This is crazy. And, you know, things are crazy and great. But then the world suddenly started to realize that something was wrong. That it's not all perfect and wonderful, and Vietnam, the Vietnamese government, or what's really considered the people, sort of take an action and decide to segregate these three people, and cleanse one of them. Strip them down from their clothes and burn their clothes and run them through the showers and, you know, get them all so that they're like in a clean room. And then here enters the hero, who is going to try and figure out what's going on and why and how they were able to, you know, where they came from, what they're doing, you know, what's everything, you know. And there could be kind of flashbacks, depending if we wanted to make this like a flashback book, because since each of them have different outlooks on life, this could be a flashback book where they all learn to be better human beings based on their current situations by flashing back and letting you learn about their past situations, you know? Or it could be a sort of forward-facing book where these people are given maybe like a drug, like a pill they have to take every day that'll stave off this fungal infection, and then they need to like travel and go somewhere, maybe to where the meteor or the offshoots of the meteor made landfall that no one has been able to go. They just like, it causes anxiety and panic if anyone gets near it.
Ooh.
You know? And it's like, you need to go there and figure out what's in there. And because there's constant cloud cover, so we can't send a satellite in, and it's putting off a radio thing, so no, we can't put in drones. And anyone who, because we're all infected, anyone who walks over there like basically has a panic attack and a heart attack and then dies. So we need you to go there and figure out what's happening. You know, what do you think of that?
I think that's an interesting line.
It sort of turns them into the heroes. So maybe the hero goes with them somehow, like maybe in like a biohazard suit. No, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe he goes with them up to a certain place, and then kind of sends them in. Maybe what they find out is that what's happening is that there's a thing growing inside of this that's constantly releasing spores. And if they can kill it, then in like 20 years, they'll be able to have a child again,
Yeah.
And there's people who want to stop that. There's people who don't believe in the hero's hypothesis that, if we let this keep going in 10 or 15 years, no one will ever have children again.
Yeah. And then they're thinking all that they, they don't want to go back to the bad old days where there's war and strife and uncertainty, and now things seem to be clicking along, so why can't we just leave well enough alone?
Right. And certain people who are proponents of the idea that, like, we have enough people now, why do we need to even have children? Maybe we've evolved past children now, so there's definitely people who want to stop
the expedition.
Maybe it's, let's see, where would it be? So if they're there, maybe it's in Australia.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
I just have a map up here, so I'm just looking at it. So that could be a thing. Maybe it's, I just thinking somewhere remote-ish. Australia, Madagascar, maybe. Madagascar. Nothing's really remote-ish. It's the world, so it's not like something's remote. It could be the moon. No, doesn't make sense. I kind of like Australia.
Yeah.
Because it's big enough, somewhere like around here, like Alice Springs, kind of the southern part of the Northern Territory, like right in the middle. But they have to they get a team, and maybe they go they sort of go to the United States, and they kind of go around and they get a team of people who are going to go. And then they arrive onto the coast, and that's where all the communications arrays and everything stop working.
Yeah.
And so they have to travel in, and they meet various forms of villains, various forms of bad guys, both people who are living in Australia, and it's nothing against Australians. I just chose the country out of the top of my head. But a sort of Mad Max kind of situations.
Yeah.
Or people who are driven mad by the fact that this kind of spore is right here, kind of pushing its thing out. And so they just have to travel in, and that's kind of the second half of the story, is where they're just kind of making their way in, horses or camels or what have you. Mm-hmm. Old Volkswagen Beetles that are under tarps.
A VW microbus.
There's a couple of motorcycle chases. It's all very Indiana Jones, all very Mad Max.
Yeah.
So what's the answer? They get to the middle, and the hero has to stay behind.
Yeah, because he is too far embedded.
Right. Mm-hmm. His anxiety, and you can kind of tell as he moves in, he gets more and more and more panicked, to the place that he starts taking the pills as well.
Yeah.
They start giving him the pills, and then all of a sudden it comes to light that they don't have enough.
Okay.
And so that's where he stays behind. And then he just kind of watching them as they sort of go the last 100 miles or whatever. Mm-hmm. Is this kind of an ambiguous ending? We don't know.
Yeah. The idea is, are they looking for a debris field where these meteors or fragments scattered over an area? And is it when you say, is this releasing spores? There's electromagnetic, in addition to other radiation factors that are inhibiting all kinds of things.
Right.
But I'm trying to get my handle on what is it that they're going to try to accomplish. Are they going to try to gather up and isolate the fragments? Is this
maybe it's part of me is thinking it's kind of like a see what you can, kind of like when they went into the Stargate for the first time. It's like, see what you can see, and if it looks kind of bad, here's a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So they have a nuclear bomb with them, mm-hmm. like an old-fashioned one that mm-hmm. doesn't use any circuit boards or anything like that, because that doesn't work. And a
plunger.
Yeah, exactly. My idea would be that they basically find a giant mushroom. It's like they sort of top a hill and it's going up like
an alien with a mushroom-shaped head. No, I'm sorry.
Or just like a huge fungus.
Yeah.
That's just kind of, and that's the ash cloud, the quote unquote ash cloud that's over Australia, is this thing just releasing its spores. And people, when the quote unquote experts were asked what was that ash cloud, and they said that was the nuclear war that happened, Australia.
Yeah.
Like that happened like 10 years ago. It's not going to be cleared up for another like 50 years. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And it's like where the reality is that this thing is creating spores and living in our atmosphere and creating spores and then spreading them out, and it's killing us. It's killing humanity. And so these guys see it, and then they have to do something about it. And I don't know if the story would end with them actually blowing it up.
I have this vision of them blowing it up and it just releasing the spores into the atmosphere, and it's just
right. Yeah, exactly. Or maybe they find a way to you can remove the spores from a mushroom by heating it up very quickly.
Yeah, saute it with some mushrooms and some white wine.
Yeah,
garlic.
Yeah. I kind of like that story. What do you think about that, Reed?
I think it's good.
Yeah, maybe this sort of thing would happen where the hero would be kind of sitting as he's facing up over the hill where they left. And no, that's a stupid thing to say. I was going to make something about mushroom clouds, but that's just really stupid to say.
I was thinking that too, like the whole thing with the nuclear blast is a mushroom cloud, but in this case, it's actually a mushroom cloud.
It's a mushroom cloud, a cloud made from mushrooms. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this story, please let me know at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or send me a message on Twitter at @getsbettercast. If you didn't like this story, also please let me know at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. I want to know what you think would make this story better. We got some new ideas about things to do in the future, not just the same old, some fun new ways to bring you improvisational storytelling. And until we get to doing those, I would say just wait, because it gets better.